Hi, I'm Keith Story, and this is part two of my presentation on the case against the Special Olympics. If you haven't watched part one, I recommend watching that first before you view this one. It'll make more sense what is here in part two. So anyway, choice and self-determination have become an important part of instruction supports for individuals with disabilities. And it's obviously important that these individuals have the ability to make informed choices and be self-determined in achieving what they want for their own lives. And informed choice has been defined as meaning that useful information is provided in a clear and understandable manner about two or more reasonable options, or the person has experience or the opportunity to gain experience to understand the benefits or risk of the options. If necessary, a person must be supported through education, role modeling, and accommodation in order to have informed choice. So in regards to Special Olympics versus more integrated recreational opportunities, if your only option is to go to the Special Olympics on a Saturday or whatever, and you're picked up at your home and you're taken there and then taken home and so on, you may choose that, but you also have to have the opportunity to experience integrated recreational opportunities and also to have the supports necessary to go to those activities, participate, and return home, and so on. So you need all of those supports in place for it to be, meaningful. So non-disabled people who run the Special Olympics often advocate that it's a choice of the participants and that they prefer the Special Olympics over other recreational options. This has often been the position of others who run segregated programs like institutions or sheltered workshops. SJSIS points out that the fact remains, however, that many of those placed in segregated settings do not have the freedom to refuse. So again, it has to be an informed choice that the person is making, otherwise it's not a true choice. And it's not clear how many individuals participating in the Special Olympics are making an informed choice to participate or have alternative choices available with appropriate supports. So again, you have to have those appropriate supports in place for the person to be making informed choice. So an individual has to be aware of and have access to choices. The individual also then needs appropriate supports. One may make a choice to participate in a city softball league, but if you can't get to and from the games and have appropriate supports during the games, then the choice becomes meaningless. And all too often, the system has no meaningful choices. Though most things are better than nothing, these are not true choices. Stay home or on Saturday or go to the Special Olympics. Well, that's not necessarily a true choice. And then a really important critique of the Special Olympics, at least from my viewpoint as a researcher and writer on these issues and other disability issues, is the lack of empirically verifiable benefits for Special Olympics. So I find it surprising that there's been very little research concerning the Special Olympics, and there are no data indicating the Special Olympics provide quality of life outcomes for participants, such as friendships, social networks, community participation, and positive attitudes. So again, the Special Olympics has been around since 1968. They've received millions and millions of federal dollars and for research and implementation, and they've not come up with a single study that shows that the Special Olympics are as good or even better than integrated recreational activities. This is a major concern for me on the case against the Special Olympics. And then there's a lot of negative empirical research regarding Special Olympics. So again, I think that we need to be data-driven and look at research on a topic in order to make informed decisions on what our attitudes are and where we want to put our resources. So Roper did two studies and found that perceptions towards people with mental retardation, again, that's the term that was used back then and is in the study, were not changed in a positive direction as a result of contact as a volunteer at the Special Olympics, and found that certain features of the event reinforces negative perceptions. And Porretta, Gillespie, and Jasma used survey methodology to assess perceptions of various agencies and organizations regarding the Special Olympics. Among the results were findings that the Special Olympics needed to change its mission to place more emphasis on inclusion. And Burns et al. Found that high school service learning students who volunteered at the Special Olympics did not have a change in their attitudes towards persons with severe disabilities as a result of their participation, and had lower attitudes than non-disabled high school students involved in integrated service learning activities. So this study again shows that if it's an integrated activity with positive supports and the people with disabilities are seen as being part of us rather than them, then you're going to get better results and more positive changes in attitudes. And then there's promotion of corporations. So one thing that's bothered me over the years, many newspapers and trade journals have reported that corporations provide fundraising along with promotion of the corporations. However, these corporations are not promoting their hiring practices of persons with developmental disabilities, and the promotions appear to be more for public relations value than for public relations value for the corporations rather than their hiring of people with disabilities. Unfortunately, there are no mandated things that corporations have to report how many people with intellectual disabilities or other types of disabilities that they hire. And they don't really provide this information. I've searched for it. So it's that the corporations are using the Special Olympics to promote the corporation rather than hiring people with disabilities and having them as employees. So here's a quote: "For marketers of global businesses and brands interested in building awareness and growth, there is no better partner than the Special Olympics movement, as we provide extensive marketing opportunities around the world." This is from Special Olympics website. "A strategic partnership with Special Olympics offers a unique branding opportunity for your organization. By developing an integrated branding and marketing strategy at Special Olympics, your company will be able to extend its brand with campaigns that reach diverse local communities while signifying global strength and presence. Enhance your corporate image and link your products and services to an inspiring cause. Increase product awareness through sampling, brand presence, and coupon distribution at Special Olympics events around the world." The South Central Area 6 Special Olympics in Wisconsin offers corporations 6 types of sponsorships: state game partner, polar plunge partner, law enforcement torch run partner, preferred provider partner, cause marketing partner, and specific events sponsor. These sponsorships are advertised thus: if your company is looking for a way to exponentially raise its sales bar, increase company exposure, and affiliate itself with the world's most credible charity, this is it. And then on September 24th, 2016, Nike welcomed over 500 athletes for the 10th anniversary of the Special Olympics Oregon Youth Games, a one-day event which, since its inception in 2007, has served more than 4,500 kids from across the state. So again, it's a marketing thing, and they're talking about kids, and many of the participants are actually adults with disabilities. For 50 years, Special Olympics Florida and Publix supermarkets have united through a mission-driven collaboration to help people with intellectual disabilities and provide more life-changing opportunities to Special Olympics Florida athletes. It's January 5th through 16th, 2022. The iconic duo will once again hold the annual Torch campaign. The 28th annual Summer Games in Eugene was sponsored primarily by AT&T Wireless Services. State Farm employees snapped instant photos of the athletes competing and receiving ribbons. Clark Refining and Marketing Incorporated announced today the kickoff of its 1999 Special Olympics sponsorship program. Clark's goal in 1999 is to raise $100,000 for the charity through company-wide involvement, store promotions, and sponsorship with employees and communities. Singular Wireless donated more than $2 million in an effort to raise $40 million. Special Olympics renews partnership with Mattel and the Mattel Children's Foundation. From the start of the relationship, approximately 10% of Mattel employees around the world have volunteered as part of Team Mattel, a Special Olympics program in Asia Pacific, East Asia, Europe, Eurasia, Latin America, and North America. In 2007, in addition to more than 2,000 employees that volunteered at Special Olympics programs worldwide, Mattel provided one of the largest corporate volunteer teams during the 2007 Special Olympics World Summer Games. More than 50 Team Mattel employees from more than 13 countries traveled to Shanghai, China to cheer on and support Special Olympics athletes as they competed in the World Games. Continuing its efforts to support and raise awareness of individuals' intellectual and developmental disabilities, Audi is the title sponsor of the inaugural Eunice Kennedy Shriver Challenge, a run, walk, and cycling benefit event hosted by Best Buddies International and Special Olympics that will take place at the Washington Monument this Saturday, October 23rd, 2010, starting at 7:30 a.m. Audi of America's president, John Day Nishun, along with more than 60 employees from the company's headquarters in Herndon, Virginia, will participate in the sporting activities. As the largest corporate team participating in the event, the Audi team has helped to fundraise more than US $50,000 for the driving forces behind the nation's disability movement. Audi is honored to support the legacy of Eunice Kennedy Shriver, said Nishun. It is especially fitting that the inaugural EKS Challenge occurs in October to coincide with the Congress-designated National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Audi truly believes that talent has no boundaries, and we hope that we can contribute to building a more formal employment program in the DC area in the future. So again, they're talking about their, involved in charity work, and I'm not against charity work at all, but they're not talking about hiring people with intellectual disabilities. Scott & Scott LLP, intellectual property and technological law firm, is a title sponsor for the second annual Special Olympics Texas Casino Night, a charity event complete with dinner and drinks, casino games, silent auction, palm, tarot reading, and entertainment to raise money for Special Olympics Texas. Last year's event sponsors included Supreme Lending, Preferred Care Partners, Jim Lee Events, Integrated Marketing Associates, Plains Capital Bank, AGM Creative, Ashley Scroggins, Julie Fennell, Ocelot, KPMG, Leisure Living Pools, ProSource Group, Tanya Boyd and Associates, Save Electronics Bo, and Anna Wolf, Bill Didlake, Julie Matchell, PC, Speed Pro, Imaging Addison, and the Julie Hotel. So again, no mention of they're actually hiring people with intellectual disabilities. Since 2002, Anthem has donated more than $125,000 in support of Special Olympics Connecticut, and that year sponsored the state's World Games team that went to Ireland. Anthem has been our Summer Games opening ceremony sponsor for years, providing much needed funds and volunteers for that event. We're excited that Anthem has expanded their reach with us and are committed to Team Connecticut as well, said Beau Doherty, president of Special Olympics Connecticut. Okay, so here's some flyers and ads that I've collected over the years from newspapers, magazines, and so on. So again, you have these corporate sponsors, no mention of their actually hiring people with intellectual disabilities. And again, you have the mixture of adults and children in the ads. And here at the 2008 California State Special Olympics Games, a lot of advertisements from corporations and businesses. And here's an ad for Torch Run. So again, they will donate charity, no mention of hiring people. Race on over to Applebee's and help Special Olympics. So Applebee's is getting customers, but are they hiring people with disabilities? Special delivery. Here you can donate money. This is from a grocery store. And so you're donating money in the name of the grocery store. Pacific Bell Wireless is a proud sponsor of Special Olympics. Build your business while changing lives. So cause-related marketing. promoting the Special Olympics. Special Olympics Northern California would like to thank the following sponsors. So they're sponsoring, but they're not thanking them for actually hiring people with intellectual disabilities, because we don't know if they did. So at no point in the corporate advertising or in the recruitment of corporate sponsorship is there any mention of actually hiring individuals with intellectual disabilities. So the point of promotion becomes increased profits for the corporation and enhancement of their corporate image, not the employment of individuals with disabilities, which helps to contribute to the high unemployment rate among adults with intellectual disabilities. So why should I hire them when I give to their charity? So we can look at this in other areas as well. So if the corporations were promoting their hiring of women or hiring people from different ethnic or racial groups, would that be okay if they're promoting charity for these organizations, but not actually hiring women or people of diversity, people of color? So again, if it relates to you in one of these groups, then you may look upon it differently than they're not hiring people like you. And then there's paternalism. With other athletic competitions, Deaf Olympics, Paralympics, people with disabilities are in control of the activities. Of the 32 members of the 2022 Board of Directors for the Special Olympics, 2 are identified as having a disability. With the Special Olympics, people with disabilities are receiving services, while those with decision-making power are people without disabilities. This situation is in contrast to developments in disability rights movement, where people with disabilities control the service delivery system. So again, people with disabilities are not in charge of the Special Olympics. And people with disabilities are often quite capable of competing successfully in competitive sports with non-disabled participants. So here's a few examples of that. So a freshman in high school with Down syndrome wanted to compete in regular writing competition, but others wanted him in Special Olympics. He insisted on writing in regular competitions and finished with 2 third places, 1 fourth place against 42 riders. 10-year-old wins Washington State bowling title. Chance Mayer from Marysville, Washington, who has Asperger's syndrome, won first place in the Washington State Pepsi bowling finals in Pullman, Washington this past May. At this year's Washington State Pepsi bowling finals, Chance finished with the first game score of 109, second score of 117, and third score of 126, his highest ever. Chance won a $500 scholarship, a t-shirt, and a plaque. But according to his mother, Christine, what Chance really won was the respect of his peers and adults who didn't believe he could accomplish something like this. So again, if people with disabilities are participating in integrated and inclusive events, they're more likely to become friends and have a positive influence on attitudes towards people with disabilities. Social interactions. So social interactions that do occur between persons with and without disabilities are likely to be of short term and not unlikely to develop friendships or social networks within the Special Olympics events. So if you're a volunteer or a hugger, you show up one time, you do some hugs, you help out a little bit, but you're unlikely to develop friendships and social networks based upon that short-term social interaction. And SMART reviews research that indicates that superficial and casual interactions do not lead to a reduction in prejudice and may actually reinforce negative stereotypes regarding people with disabilities. So these short-term interactions may be having a more negative impact than a positive impact. So this is from an article in Sports Illustrated for Kids in 1995. So my name is Jacob Dickinson. I'm 13 years old and I live in North Haven, Connecticut. I got to work at the 1995 Special Olympics World Games. When the games finally started, I helped out at different events. I worked at track and field. I carried athletes' warm-up clothes and baskets from the starting line to the finish line. I kicked a ball around with the soccer team from Barbados to help them warm up before a game. I made new friends. I became good pals with a volunteer from Australia. I met athletes. We talked about their sports. On the last day of the games, I wasn't too happy. All my fun was over. I went to the closing ceremony and saw all my new friends one last time. We said goodbye. We promised to write to one another. So again, it's that one-time social interaction. And in this case, it didn't lead to friendships or social networks or even continuing to see each other. And Ryan Skur, in a review of 24 studies investigating medical students' attitudes towards persons with intellectual disabilities, also found that interacting more frequently with persons with intellectual disability resulted in higher self-reporting attitudes towards persons with intellectual disabilities. So again, you need those sustained interactions based upon equality in order to really develop friendships. And Murch et al. Found that for UK residents, frequency of contact was the most significant predictor of positive attitudes towards persons with intellectual disabilities. A comfort with or intention to interact with persons with an intellectual disability. The second contact was important. And from Van Sickle, weighted variable that has been found to impact attitudes towards persons with intellectual disabilities is the nature of the relationship one has with the person with an intellectual disability. And Morin found from a sample that those who had self-defined excellent interactions with persons with intellectual disabilities reported more positive attitudes towards persons with intellectual disabilities. And then there's been concern raised about financial issues with the Special Olympics. And there are only general guidelines for appropriate levels of compensation in nonprofit organizations and what is appropriate to have salaries that attract and keep competent personnel. And the salaries for Special Olympics may be appropriate or not, depending upon one's perspective, but here are a few points to consider in evaluating them. So I presented this information at different conferences and classes and so on, and people have reacted a wide range of responses. So I'll just present the information here. So look at the 2019 Internal Revenue Service 1990 report, which is the most recent one available to me, shows continued concern in this area. For that year, the revenue was $135 million. And for that year, $27 million was spent on salaries, benefits, and other compensation by the national office. Salary compensation for the top 5 highest compensated employees are $340,000 for the Chief Marketing Development Officer, $303,000 for the Chief Regional and Program Operations, $266,000 for the CFO, $265,000 for the Chief Information Officer, and $244,000 for the Chief Human Resources Officer. In addition, the CEO received $483,000. So you can say, well, those are outrageous salaries for a nonprofit organization, or you can say, well, you're getting good compensation for hiring competent and well-qualified people. And in 2019, one of the members of the board of directors, Benjamin Hack, was paid $11,152. So I don't understand why members of the board, which is a volunteer position, are receiving compensation financially. And in 2019, the Special Olympics total lobbying expenditures to influence the legislative body, which is direct lobbying, was $100,000. And the lobbying non-taxable amount was $1 million. So Special Olympics is spending a lot of money for lobbying with legislative bodies. I'm not sure that's appropriate for a nonprofit organization. And then there's a use of contractors. So in 2019, the national office used 8 contractors who raised $47 million for the Special Olympics, of which $5 million or 12% was paid to or retained by the contractors. And then state chapter officers are also well compensated. For example, the Northern California Special Olympics vice president had a salary of $150,000 plus a $6,406 expense account. And then some research I did regarding Special Olympics, that they've used for-profit direct marketing firms where a little of the money raised actually goes to charity. In some cases, the charity actually loses money. So this is not specific to the Special Olympics. Well, the data here I'm presenting is specific to Special Olympics, but this is an issue for many nonprofit organizations when they use for-profit marketing firms. For example, the Northern California Special Olympics in 2006 paid $901,000 to one fundraiser, the Heritage Company. And then in the book, the Kennedy Women by Lawrence Weimer, it's noted that Bobby Shriver, the son of Eunice Shriver, who was CEO at the time, was working for the Special Olympics in the early 1990s in California, and was paid $150,000 annual salary, which made him the second highest paid employee in the entire organization. So have concerns about that. And then there's the use of taxpayer dollars. So money spent on the Special Olympics not only involves individual and corporate contributions, but also money from federal funds. The Special Olympics has their own funding categories through the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services. And applicant eligibility, Special Olympics is the only eligible recipient of funds. So, if you're wanting to run integrated recreational program, you can't get federal funds through this category. It only goes to the Special Olympics. And in fiscal year 2020, $24 million received in non-competitive awards. So again, these awards are not competitive with non-Special Olympics organizations. So here's the amount, some recent years, $17 million, $15 million, $12 million, $10 million. So this is a large amount of money that's going to the Special Olympics, this federal tax money. And again, the Special Olympics has no research to indicate that they do as good or even a better job than integrated recreational activities. More examples here. And there's the website that the information is from, in case you want to look up even more years. And then functional skills. So functional curricula consists of teaching skills that have a direct and immediate utility in students' lives within their communities and contribute directly to the attainment of greater independence, self-sufficiency, and quality of life. So we want people with intellectual disabilities to be learning skills that are going to have a positive impact in their life. So employment skills, social skills, recreational skills, community living skills. Those are all important things for people with intellectual disabilities to learn. And many of the Special Olympics events of doubtful functional value do not prepare people for the criterion of ultimate functioning. So how functional are some events, like the softball throw, where the participant throws to a spot on the ground rather than to a person? So I'd say that's a non-functional thing to be teaching somebody. And then there's the allocation of resources. So segregated activities are often seen as the norm, and the special associations have the responsibility for providing recreational services for people with disabilities. Thus, there's a scarcity of requests for integrated services and few resources to provide them, while people with developmental disabilities often have an abundance of unstructured free time because they have a very high unemployment rate. Okay, in 2007, a spending bill includes $7.5 million for Special Olympics in Idaho. And Idaho's congressional leaders have managed to insert $7.5 million into a comprehensive federal spending bill for the Special Olympics Winter Games planned in Idaho in 2009. Fisher says organizers tend to ask state leaders for up to $5 million to support when the legislature convenes next month. Hopefully those states will be involved with financial support, Fisher says. If we start to think of a return on investment of $5 million, it becomes a worthy cause economically as well as politically and socially. So again, a lot of state and federal tax dollars are going to support the Special Olympics. They're not available to other nonprofit organizations. And then integrated recreational choices may be limited in part because funding is more likely to go to the Special Olympics. Discussing a survey of Special Olympics participants, Hereda and Sipperstein advocated for greater opportunities and choice for sport programming for individuals with intellectual disabilities. It's also interesting that the results found that 48% of active athletes in the Special Olympics engaged in 3 or more hours of leisure time physically active per week outside of their participation in the Special Olympics. So a lot of the athletes are engaged in non-Special Olympics activities, but the funding is not necessarily there for those activities. Again, I mentioned this before, there's a lack of empirically verifiable lifestyle outcomes from the Special Olympics. So changes in service delivery systems have led to a focus on individuals with developmental disabilities leading socially valued lifestyles involving community integration, social relationships, skill development, choice, and self-determination. But the Special Olympics does not have any research indicating that they provide these benefits through participation. And then it's possible to analyze programs in terms of their ability to deliver lifestyle outcomes from 6 quality of life domains: physical well-being, material well-being, social well-being, productive well-being, emotional well-being, and civic well-being, as outlined by Fels. So I have found that these 6 categories are really helpful in analyzing if a program is effective or not. And again, there's no research indicating the Special Olympics is effective in providing quality of life outcomes as outlined by Phelps for participants. The few published studies show limited or mixed results at best. So there's some references there if you're looking for something to read. And it's important to note there are no studies finding the Special Olympics is more effective than or even equal to integrated recreational programs in providing desired quality of life outcomes. So again, the Special Olympics is not looked at whether or not they're having an impact on individuals' quality of life. For example, Thompson et al. In a review of research found that, quote, the development of friendships was common among participants with and without disability. These were rarely transferred to the wider community, and that there was little evidence these programs improved community participation and inclusion for people with intellectual disability. So, what do we do? So basically, there's 3 overall choices regarding the Special Olympics in terms of what, if anything, should be done. First would be no change and to keep the current structure in place. Though, with the arguments I presented, I don't think that this is a viable option. Second would be to reform the current structure, but to keep the basic premise and conditions of the Special Olympics. However, since the premise of the Special Olympics is wrong, I think in regards to inclusion of people with developmental disabilities, and is not in keeping with best practice in the field, I don't see this as a good option either. Third would be to discontinue or replace the Special Olympics with programs in inclusive recreational leisure situations. And as noted by Smith, Edel, Smith, and Stodden, changing from the old ways to the new ways means taking away the familiar, and these changes can be difficult, but that is important to question the basic assumptions upon which program and service systems are organized. And some authors have suggested concepts such as the Kennedy Games or the National Youth Olympics, where there's a formalized structure for integrated recreational activities. And others have advocated for supports and services in integrated settings. And there is an extensive empirical research base which indicates that individuals with severe disabilities can be successfully included in integrated recreational settings with appropriate supports. And Iverson recommended the use of a navigator to assist people with disabilities in participation in sports and recreation. So again, it often comes down to, are appropriate supports available to help people with intellectual disabilities participate in integrated recreational activities? So my final point is, like all segregated programs, the Special Olympics is unable to deliver important quality of life outcomes for people with severe disabilities and often diminishes the possibility of achieving these outcomes. So why continue it? I think we should replace it with integrated recreational activities. So that's my take on the Special Olympics. Here are some things, further reading. Saturday night, you're kind of bored, don't have anything to do. You can look up some of these articles and read through them and see what you think. So if you agree with me or you don't agree with me on part of things, disagree with me on part of things, I think it's important to have professional discussions about controversial topics like the Special Olympics. There's a lot of controversial things in the field, such as institutions, inclusive schools, segregated schools, supported employment, sheltered workshops, and so on. And just delving into these issues can help you define what you think is important in the field and where you want to put your skills and supports. So again, let's have a fun and professional discussion on it. Here's some further reading. Here's some more. I'll just walk through some of these slides here so you can take a look at them and pause it and write down or take a picture, screenshot, whatever, if there's something you want to read about the Special Olympics. And then I've also put in some things, books and things like Raymond's Room, Ending Segregation of People with Disabilities by Dale DeLeo. I highly recommend that book. Some more things to read. Mary Johnson's Make Them Go Away, Clint Eastwood, Christopher Reeve, and The Case Against Disability Rights. It's another excellent book that I think you might find valuable to read. Some more articles. Some by me, sorry about that. Excuse the shameless self-promotion. So that's it. I hope this was valuable for you. I had fun doing this presentation, and let's have a good discussion about these issues.